Hello everyone and welcome to Who Wore It Better, the weekly segment which I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. I tell you, both shows this week had a lot of stuff going well for it as the build toward WrestleMania intensifies. There was, however, across both shows, a lot of things to make you raise your eyebrows, but not in that good Dwayne Johnson sort of way. Raw begins with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman coming out. Now, it's been said many times about Heyman in particular, but the man can truly sell ice to an Eskimo. I mean, he's doing his damnedest here to sell you on WrestleMania, Goldberg versus Lesnar. He also does a great job, aside from the promo itself being very good, he also does a great job shutting up the fans who are chanting Goldberg, which on one hand is kind of unfortunate because Goldberg is the babyface in theory in all this. Heyman wraps things up talking about Heyman's theory of WrestleMania relativity, which is kind of a word salad, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be hearing about that theory a lot in the remaining build. A couple of women's matches on the show on Monday, neither of them were particularly good, especially the first one, but what's more important than the matches themselves here was the storylines that were building around them. First, you had Sasha Banks versus Dana Brooke. Dana's first match back in what feels like forever. I mean, she took time off to train for the Arnold Classic, which, by the way, she placed dead last in her competition for. This match goes for less than 30 seconds. Sasha rolls up Dana Brooke, grabbing the tights for the win. But what's more important here is what happens right afterwards. Charlotte gets in the ring and berates Dana Brooke for losing. Dana finally snaps and attacks her former mentor, and the crowd goes nuts for it. They're chanting Dana, and it's a brilliant moment. I've been saying for a long time that if done correctly, this kind of blow-up can be a very good thing for both parties, and Dana Brooke can get super over. I think the timing of it's interesting because I'm curious to see how it's going to factor into the triple threat match for the title at WrestleMania, but it's still a good moment for Dana. The other women's match comes later in the night when Bayley takes on Nia Jax in a non-title match. Nia wants to get back into the women's title discussion. Nia loses via disqualification for not responding to the referee's 5 count, continues to beat up Bayley on the outside, which is not a great look for your babyface women's champion, especially from the preceding segment with Bayley and Sasha backstage, when Sasha really telegraphing her heel turn at this point, talking about how she's trying to get in Bayley's head, but oh, don't listen to the haters who think you don't deserve the championship, but hey, we're friends. So it's very obvious what they're doing here, but it's like it's coming at the expense of Bayley, I feel, who has the last several weeks has not looked very good. This is not a great way to build up a babyface. This week the company announced the recipient for this year's Warrior Award. It's going to former Rutgers University football player Eric LeGrand, who's best known for having a career-ending injury in 2010 when a head-on collision caused him to crack his vertebrae, going paralyzed from the neck down. Now, Eric LeGrand, since his injury, has done some amazing stuff as far as his own personal battle for regaining mobility and his inspirational speeches, his motivational speeches he gives across the country. Eric LeGrand has done great things. I just find it ironic that he's winning the Warrior Award because in his own life, the Warrior had mocked draws for being what he called a cripple, and now Eric LeGrand, this person who's confined to a wheelchair for possibly the rest of his life, is now the recipient of an award that bears the Warrior's name. But what are you gonna do? KO and Smojo teaming up against Sami Zayn and Chris Jericho. Before the match takes place, Kevin Owens is now we've seen it a couple times. I think he's officially stolen Batista's old spotlight gimmick, and he cuts a terrific promo. This match is one of the many on Monday that don't go very far. During the match, Kevin Owens kicks Jericho off the apron, so it's a bit of a 2-on-1 dynamic with Zayn, who has a lot of fire here. He does a nice over-the-top rope plancha onto both Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe, but eventually the heels continue to dominate. They also don't answer the referee's count because they're double teaming. They also get disqualified, and then eventually Jericho gets back in the ring. Both of the faces are laid out. The heels have done their job, and they've walked off and stuff. I think it's very good. It's kind of, they're bordering on the edge of doing it too much, where they care less about wins than do hurting people. I think ultimately, it's stronger for wrestlers just to keep winning. But this is, right now I think it's good what they're doing here. They just need to avoid doing it too much. The New Day are backstage debuting their new talk segment, New Day Talks, very original. I don't know if this is going to be a one-time thing or not, but I was entertained by this. I thought all three guys were pretty funny in their roles, especially Big E and Xavier Woods. Big Show was the guest. The whole purpose of this segment was for a couple of things. One, to advertise that Big Show is going to be in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal WrestleMania, meaning, sorry, no Shaquille O'Neal match. And two, also to sell the new Jetsons WWE crossover movie that just came out this week. And then in comes Titus O'Neil. He and Big Show have a scuffle, and then that leads to a match later on in which the Big Show, again, like he did with Rusev, just kills Titus O'Neil. 3 straight choke slams, 1, 2, 3. Buy the Jetsons DVD, folks. Actually, here's the thing. I already did buy the DVD, so expect a review for this thing in April. Enzo and Cass taking on Cesaro and Sheamus to determine who will be the #1 contenders going into WrestleMania. Enzo and Cass have a chance to plug their new merchandise, the Cup of Haters mug, as well as interject a bunch of March Madness references into their promos. I knew from the beginning when they made this match last week, this is going to end in a bullshit finish. It's going to be a triple threat at Mania, and that's exactly what happened. Anderson and Gallows and a couple of dum-dums, they run in and attack members of both teams to cause the match to be thrown out. And again, I don't know if they've never watched an episode of Raw or they've never watched WWE before, but this always happens. The heel champion thinks, oh, well, if I just take out both my opponents in a match, I won't have any opponents. It's a perfect plan, the perfect crime. But then, of course, later Mick Foley makes the match for WrestleMania Triple Threat. I don't know what much this is used in all of professional wrestling, but this is definitely the most overused trope in WWE, and I hate it. And speaking of which, now that we have this match, how many multi-man matches are we going to get in the mid to lower card at Mania? Because we have the Raw Tag Team titles, the Raw Women's titles, a triple threat, the SmackDown Women's title is going to be every woman on hand, Honor the Giant Battle Royal, of course. Who knows what the SmackDown tag situation is going to look like? I mean, they can't have too many teams for that match because, hey, they got to have some jobbers in the Battle Royal, don't they? It just comes off as very lazy to me for them to have all these multi-man matches, very uncreative. It's just like, let's throw everyone together. Everyone needs a PO. Everyone needs to get their WrestleMania bonus. You know, a year or so ago, I made my off-season video, and people mocked me and criticized my plan for it because, oh, some wrestlers wouldn't have a chance to have proper build for Mania matches. You know, under what they're currently doing, that's the problem. I'm seeing WrestleMania matches getting set up with 3 weeks or less to go. You know, under my model, plenty of wrestlers could come in the month of WrestleMania and still get in a match, and it'd be okay. Roman Reigns taking on Jinder Mahal. Earlier in the match, Roman gets distracted when the Undertaker's gong sound effect happens. He gets momentarily distracted, wins the match anyway, of course, but hey, that dropkick by Jinder Mahal looks pretty sick. After the match, Roman calls out Undertaker, but instead Shawn Michaels comes out, which that was a pretty cool surprise. I don't think he was not advertised for it as far as I know, so nice to see him here in this capacity. Shawn doing what he does best in retirement, providing a lot of exposition for big matches. He's basically telling Roman, you're doomed, and says the Taker will eat him alive. He's already in his head. Don't go fighting the Undertaker at WrestleMania because he's got special powers there. And then Roman, with showing more of that heelish tendency, he's not fully over the hump yet, but he's kind of leaning toward there, has the heelish confidence about him, saying, you know, Taker retired you at Mania, but then at WrestleMania, I'm going to retire him. And he gets the smirk and he walks off. And that's the end of the segment, but then here comes big Braun Strowman, who just runs it and obliterates Roman. Oh my God, on the ramp, he just takes like 18 tumbles down the ramp, gets wedged in between the ramp and the barricade and the lights. It was a beautiful bump. I watched it 50 times and I laughed my ass off every time. It was amazing. Cruiserweight time as Austin Aries makes his Raw debut against Arya Daivari. Pretty standard match here, basically just designed for Aries to get a lot of his key spots in. The match ends when he tosses Arya onto his head. That looked pretty scary, followed up with the rolling elbow to win the match, giving him a lot of momentum for 205 Live the next night, where he would go on to win the Fatal 5-Way for the #1 contendership for WrestleMania and Neville's Cruiserweight Championship. They love Fatal 5-Ways in 205 Live. That's what the 5 is for. It's for the 5 ways. At the top of the show, Mick Foley was given the order by Stephanie McMahon, you must fire someone by the end of the night. So the whole night you're wondering, who's Foley going to fire? And so then it's closing segment, which was such a brilliant segment as far as I'm concerned. It's one of the better ones I've seen on Raw in quite some time. Foley comes out and takes a stand against Stephanie. He says, you know, I would fire Stephanie McMahon. Of course, it's more of a symbolic gesture than anything. He can't really fire her. This is the blow-off we've been wanting for months, standing up to Stephanie after just months and months of being verbally chewed out in front of everybody. It made Foley look so weak and incompetent and impotent. But tonight he's finally like, yeah, he's finally standing up to her, calling out for being a liar. Triple H comes out, and it's playing up on all their history together from like the late 90s and 2000 when Triple H retired Foley. And it's just all these memories are coming back up when they're talking, and Triple H holds the futures of Noel and Dewey Foley over Mick's head. If you fight this now, you'll regret it, and your kids will hate you for it. I love the part where Triple H says, you're going to go to the back and have an epiphany. I love Triple H's mannerisms and his voice when he did the whole epiphany thing. That was hilarious. It covered so many emotions for me. They tell Foley to leave, but Foley turns around and gives Sacco to Triple H. Oh, it was so great. The crowd went nuts for it, but Stephanie gets a low blow. Looks like they're about to destroy Mick Foley. Then Seth Rollins comes out, and biggest pop of the night for Seth Rollins. The arena lit up when he showed up. And then he's hobbling out with the crutch. And you think, oh, it's going to be another hobbly Rollins thing. But no, Rollins drops the crutch. And oh, that was just such a cool moment. If the show ended with, Rollins standing tall at the end of the night, I think that would have been a cooler thing. But that wasn't exactly the case, because they have a fight and Rollins is jumping around looking like he's pretty much there, which surprised me. So maybe they're gonna have a match after all. I hear that basically the doctors have given him a conditional release, not full matches yet. So who knows where that's gonna go. But Rollins is jumping around, so that's very positive looking. Then Triple H just annihilates Rollins' knee with the crutch, puts him in a reverse figure 4. And that's how the show ends. It's just this cool, a bunch of emotional highs and lows in this closing segment, with Foley standing tall, then getting beat down, then fighting back, then getting beat down again, and then Rollins coming out. It was such a cool segment, and I think it just covered a lot of bases here. Smackdown opens up, and for the night, the commentary team's a little different. There's no David Otunga, there's no Mauro Ranallo, it's just Tom Phillips and JBL. Even though it's not quite the most ideal combination I'd like to hear on SmackDown, just for having two people on the announce desk for once, it sounds so peaceful, doesn't it? AJ Styles opens the show with a promo pleading his case and talking about all the hoops he's had to jump through since losing the championship to John Cena. Great heel work here by Styles throughout the night. Now, I've said in the past how it's great when heels feel they're 100% justified, but when they actually objectively are justified, it makes it hard for fans to root against them. But what makes a difference here and what gets Styles over that hump is when he goes beyond the pale and pushes the envelope to do something reprehensible that makes him lose the moral high ground. Compared to Charlotte. I said the same thing about Charlotte a couple weeks ago when she lost the championship and then lost the rematch to Bayley. I feel that she as a heel character has not progressed and evolved enough to really make you feel oh, she's still being really heelish. She's just doing the same thing. But with Styles, what he does here is later in the night, he beats the fuck out of Shane McMahon. He just jumps him as soon as he gets out of his car, beats him up backstage, throws him headfirst into a car window. And it's just it's one of those things you don't see something like that very often on WWE that much anymore, on PGTV. And it was just so over the top for Styles to do that, taking all of his frustrations out, knowing that he's not at WrestleMania. He takes his frustrations out either rightly or wrongly against Shane McMahon. He sees Shane as the reason he's not there. People like Styles, but people also like Shane McMahon, so it just creates this thing where he loses the moral high ground when he takes his frustrations out on Shane. 2 women's matches on Raw, 2 women's matches on SmackDown. By far, the SmackDown women's matches excelled in just about every way imaginable. Let's start with Becky Lynch versus Natalya. It's one of the 2 matches we're seeing here to build up the championship match for WrestleMania. But then we've seen this match before. Becky wins with a disarm her, but immediately afterward, Carmella comes out and decks both women, and then James Ellsworth comes out and goes yeah, but he's selling at the same time. What is Ellsworth selling? He didn't do anything. Is he still selling the beating he got last week from John Cena? Wow, A+ for commitment there. Then Mickie James takes on Alexa Bliss in a non-title match. This match was, of the 2 women's matches, was the one I liked more, mostly because it's a pairing we hadn't seen before on TV, but also because it's also just more continuation of their story. Mickie James came in as an ally to Alexa Bliss, so they had that partnership for a while. It blew up last week, so this is it coming to a head. A lot of great false finishes here in this match. The match ends when Bliss goes for a standing moonsault and misses it. Mickie hits her with the Mick kick and wins the match. Time for some Miz TV. Miz and Maurice continue to blur the lines when it comes to John Cena and Nikki Bella and their backstage clout and the politicking and the backstabbing. What's real, what's just rumor and innuendo, as a certain podcast might call it. It's almost too meta for me. It's almost getting to the point where it's going to go over fans' heads, because not every fan cares about what happens with John Cena and Nikki Bella. Not every fan watches the reality TV stuff, so I feel like it's kind of getting to the point where it's it's a commercial for Total Divas and Total Bellas. But at the same time, with me having that knowledge of all the stuff that's gone on over the years with Cena and Bella's alleged politicking, then yeah, it does make it more intriguing to have Miz stand up against it, have Maurice stand up against it. Maurice's speech against Nikki Bella on Tuesday I thought was great, talking about how they used to be best friends, but Nikki stabbed her in the back over the first season of Total Divas, calling her a manipulative, lying bitch. I feel like this is one of the few angles going to WrestleMania that has legitimate heat. Do you feel the same kind of heat for Roman Reigns and Undertaker? Kevin Owens, Chris Jericho's got some good heat. And, you know, Goldberg-Lesnar, the heat's kind of there, but you feels like it's so fabricated. But meanwhile, with Miz and Cena and Bella and Maurice, it's like, it feels like, oh, it's so much there, and it's really a lot you could just sink your teeth into. Anyway, Nikki and John come out and chase them off. Nikki challenges Maurice to a match or a fight, call it what you will. Daniel Bryan comes out, ups the ante, and makes that match official for WrestleMania. Cena and Nikki Bella taking on Miz and Maurice. By the way, Cena didn't talk at all in this segment, which was very rare for him to do. And so now the match is finally official. Mojo Rawley taking on Dolph Ziggler in a follow-up from last week's backstage confrontation. The match doesn't go very far. Dolph gets thrown out a few times and then just leaves. What is Dolph's endgame here? Randy Orton comes out and explains his actions, basically lays bare his entire plan from the fall of last year onto today, where he infiltrated the Wyatt family, gained Bray's trust, and eventually snapped back at him. So now he's trying to take everything away from Bray. He says, I'm going to take everything from you, including your championship. Bray interrupts on screen, and he says, you know, the soul of Sister Abigail is still alive. It's kind of like one of those things where, you know, when you're playing a game with your friend when you're a kid, and your friend's like, I shot you, you're dead, and you're like, no, I have a force field on, so I'm not dead. Bray then baptizes himself in the ashes of Sister Abby, just rubs it all over his arms and his face. He's like screaming, and it's the most intense and scary I've seen Bray in quite some time, because even though he's the champion, his back is against the wall, because, you know, Orton did get one up on him a couple weeks ago, but like, how long will that victory last? You know, what's Bray's mindset here? He says he's got all the power, he's the power of the devil himself in him. I don't know if it turns out to, like Survivor Series a couple years ago is I hear the lightning and the thunder, then it might jump the shark, but I do like where this is going. Main event time is the American Alpha take on the Usos. Tag teams, remember them? This match had like so little heat to it because, first of all, it's been weeks since we've seen these guys on TV. So all the heat they had going into their confrontation, which was actually built pretty well in the weeks before their break, just stopped. So no one cared because all the build had died because they couldn't capitalize on it. They didn't strike while things were hot. And so the crowd was dead, not just for this match, the whole show. And then during this match, a lot of "We Want Angle" chants, which I know they're in Pittsburgh on SmackDown. I know Angle was backstage during the show. Still not a very good look. The Usos finally defeat American Alpha for a change at the end here. But the real story here is all the intertwining and overlapping with what's going on with Shane McMahon. So at this point, AJ has been fired by Daniel Bryan. So you get Shane walking around, staggering, bloody, with Jamie Noble and Fit Finlay, and you think he's going to leave the arena, but then he decides to turn around and go back to the arena. Having the overlapping with Shane and with the tag team match, it made the tag team match kind of unimportant. No one really cared about it anyway, but just, I like the overlap. I think there needs to be some more of that, like having more, it's like, hey, some breaking stuff is going on. We need to go to the back and see what's happening. Then at the very end of the show, Shane staggers out on stage, no music. That was kind of cool. He comes out, he says, AJ Styles doesn't have an opponent for WrestleMania. Well, he does now. Boom! Chris Lee knows best. Like, wow, they just got that line in just in the nick of time by a frog's hair. That was just great timing. If Shane had paused a second longer to deliver his final line, you would have lost it. And so, good timing on their part. Time now for me to decide who won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And guys, this was one of the tougher decisions for me in several weeks. And I feel like with WrestleMania coming up, it's going to be a lot tougher to make these decisions every week up until WrestleMania, because both shows, I feel, are doing a great job building up the matches at WrestleMania. Even though from afar the card for the pay-per-view is kind of meh, like if you look at every segment build and every match build in isolation, it's actually not that bad. Like they're actually doing a very good job building with what they have. A lot of great segments across both shows, not a ton of great matches, so it's going to be difficult to use matches as a gauge for what made a show good or bad this week. But ultimately, again, it's a toss-up, and you can make an argument for either show this week as far as I'm concerned. I am going to say SmackDown wins. I think Raw, here's what I liked about Raw. I loved the closing segment. Ooh, gave me chills. It was easily one of the better closing segments of the last several months on Raw. Definitely for 2017, it's a top contender like Festival of Friendship. Just, you know, the intertwining of the history with Triple H and Foley and Stephanie, and the new stuff with Triple H and Seth Rollins, that was great stuff. The crutch drop, that clip there is going to play in promo segments in perpetuity until WrestleMania, I guarantee you. Paul Heyman's promo at the beginning was great. New Day talks, even though it was just like a comedy segment meant to sell a DVD, I still thought New Day was entertaining. Shawn Michaels' surprise appearance, that was pretty fun. Austin Aries making his debut on Raw in a match capacity, A++ as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, as far as cons go, I think the too many matches, this is what really put SmackDown over the top for me was that Raw had too many bullshit finishes for their matches. There was nothing conclusive about almost anything. Like the women's matches, I didn't think were that great. In fact, the 3 matches you had on Raw ending in a DQ, one of the women's matches, the tag match to determine number 1 contender, and the tag match with Samoa Joe and Kevin Owens versus Chris Jericho and Zayn. All these just DQ finishes, you know? As again, not a lot of good matches this week between both shows. But the tag champions looking super dumb. Like, I'd say them screwing themselves out of, putting them into a triple threat situation at WrestleMania because we'll just jump both contenders. That is more harmful to them, makes them look dumber than losing to Roman Reigns in 2-on-1 action, in my opinion. That's what really sunk it for Raw for me this week. It's just the constant DQ finishes. I think if you get one finish that happens too often, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna suffer make the show suffer, in my opinion. As far as SmackDown goes, I thought, even though the Shane versus Styles matchup, like Corey Graves said, it's not doing much for me, but I think if you just watch how they built the story throughout the whole show from beginning to end, AJ Styles cutting a promo, AJ and Shane fighting backstage, or rather AJ just beating up Shane backstage, Daniel Bryan firing AJ Styles, Shane coming, he's been treated for his wounds, he goes to the back, he comes back out, says he wants Styles at WrestleMania. The way they built that thing from beginning to end to me was just so awesome. That's how you build like a main event level story. Even again, I'm not digging the fact this is like SmackDown's main event over Orton and Wyatt, but that's the way it is, and I think the way they're building it is top-notch stuff. I also enjoyed the Orton-Wyatt build. I liked what they did with Miz and Maurice. The Miz TV stuff was great. Of the few matches they had, Mickey and Alexa, to me, was my favorite. Again, just because it was a continuation of a previous story, and it's a matchup we haven't seen before. Like Usos and American Alpha, how many times have we seen that in the past? As far as cons for SmackDown, again, I'm just confused at what Dolph Ziggler's endgame is. Why is he just taking these count-out losses? Why is he allowing himself to lose matches and he'll beat people up with chairs afterward? Is this, what's your purpose? What's your point in this heel turn you're in now? All of the heat they had for the tag team stuff with American Alpha and the Usos, just gone. They totally squandered over those 2 weeks so they weren't on TV. They couldn't air one pre-tape package or one promo building up to this match happening on Tuesday night. So yeah, the crowd didn't care for it because there was nothing to care about, because the match, they had no heat to it. And I think both champions, the women's champion and the tag champions, losing non-title matches, I thought was not a great look. If it was one or the other, I probably would have been okay with it, but if it was both, not a great look. So again, very tough decision this week, and it's going to get tougher as the weeks go on, in my opinion, but I'm going to give SmackDown the win this week for who wore it better. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown in the comments section below. Don't forget to vote for which show you thought was better in the gimmick right here in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.